The stars were cold and silent when High Counselor Zethkar first looked at the blue planet called Earth. The massive ship hung in space like a dark mountain, and inside its metal halls the alien leader studied the data on his screen. The planet was rich with rare metals that his people needed, and the creatures living there looked weak and stupid. Zethkar had conquered 40 worlds in his long life, and this one would be easy. The humans walked on 2 legs like children and used primitive weapons that could barely scratch metal. They had no shields to protect their cities and no energy weapons to fight back. The council meeting was quick and simple. 12 alien races sat around the crystal table and listened as Zethkar explained his plan. Humans would be moved to work camps while the planet was cleaned and prepared for proper use. Some of the younger council members asked why they could not simply trade with the humans, but Zethkar laughed at their foolishness. Why bargain with animals when you could simply take what you needed? The vote was 11-1 and the war fleet began moving toward Earth. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Base and watched the approaching ships through his telescope. The human had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, but he had always hoped it would be peaceful contact with friendly aliens. The massive alien vessels were larger than anything humanity had ever built, and their weapons glowed with terrible energy. Morrison tried to send radio messages asking for discussion, but the aliens did not respond. Instead, they moved into position around Earth and began charging their weapons. The first attack came without warning. Beams of pure energy reached down from space and turned the great cities into glass, and New York vanished in a flash of white light. London became a crater that glowed in the dark. Tokyo was cut in half by a weapon that split atoms themselves in 1 hour. 3 billion humans died, and the survivors ran screaming into underground tunnels. Morrison watched his world burn and felt something cold settle in his chest. He had been a peaceful man who believed in talking and finding common ground. But the aliens had made that impossible. They had chosen to be monsters, and now they would learn what monsters could do. The human military bases that survived the first attack were hidden deep in mountains or under the ocean. Morrison sent desperate messages to every surviving commander and told them to gather their forces. The aliens thought they had won, but humans were harder to kill than they looked. Captain Ryan Carter was flying patrol when the attack began, and he watched his home city die from 50 miles away. His fighter jet was fast, but the alien ships were faster. His missiles bounced off their shields like toys. When he fired his guns, the bullets melted before they could touch the enemy hull. Carter barely escaped when an alien fighter came after him, but he learned something important in that chase. The alien pilot was good, but he flew like he was following rules from a book. He never took risks or tried anything unexpected. Humans might be weaker, but they were not predictable. Dr. Lisa Bennett was working in her laboratory when the bombs fell. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms that humans had found on other worlds. When the attack started, she was looking at samples of alien bacteria under her microscope. The laboratory was built deep underground, so it survived the bombing, but Bennett lost her family and her home. She had always believed science should help people live better lives, but now she had a different purpose. The aliens had brought death to her world, so she would bring death to theirs. Commander Sophie Davis was in charge of military communications when the first alien message came through. The aliens spoke in clicking sounds that hurt human ears, but their translation machines turned the words into English. High Counselor Zethkar appeared on every screen and told the humans they had 1 day to surrender. He said humans were animals that had lived on a planet meant for better creatures. The survivors would be moved to camps where they could work until they died. Davis recorded every word and studied how the aliens thought. They were proud and thought they were better than everyone else. That pride would become their weakness. After the first day of bombing, the aliens sent down smaller ships to study what they had done. They wanted to see how humans behaved when they were beaten and afraid. This was their second mistake. If they had simply killed every human quickly, they might have won, but they wanted to watch and learn. The alien scientists came down in small groups to collect samples and take pictures. They wore thick armor and carried powerful weapons, but they did not expect the desperate humans hiding in the ruins. The first alien to die was killed by a human child who dropped a heavy stone from a broken building. The second died when humans used explosives to collapse a tunnel while he was inside. The aliens had never fought an enemy that used such simple and brutal tactics. Every dead alien left behind weapons and equipment that humans could study. Dr. Bennett got her first alien corpse 3 days after the invasion began. She cut it open with careful hands and learned that alien blood was different from human blood. Their bodies were stronger, but they had no defense against the tiny creatures that lived. Everywhere on Earth High, Counselor Zethkar watched the reports from his command ship and felt the first touch of worry. The humans should have surrendered by now. Instead, they were fighting back with rocks and bombs and desperate courage. They had lost most of their population and all of their great cities, but they would not give up. Zethkar had never seen anything like it in 40 conquered worlds. He decided to be more careful and sent down larger groups of soldiers to finish the job. But Admiral Morrison was ready for them. The human commander had gathered every surviving soldier and pilot and scientist into a secret network. They hid in places the aliens could not find and studied every piece of alien technology they could capture. Morrison knew humans could not win a fair fight, but humans had never been good at fighting fair. They would learn to cheat and lie and strike from shadows until the aliens regretted ever coming to Earth. 3 months after the invasion began, Admiral Morrison stood in a cave deep under the Rocky Mountains. The human resistance had moved their main base to this hidden place where alien sensors could not find them. Around him were the survivors of Earth's military, and they looked tired and angry. Morrison had lost weight and his hair had turned gray, but his eyes burned with cold fire. He was no longer the peaceful commander who had once hoped for friendly contact with aliens. The aliens had taught him that some enemies could only be destroyed. Derlisa Bennett walked into the meeting room carrying a metal box that hummed with electricity. Inside the box were samples of alien blood and tissue that she had been studying for weeks. She had learned terrible and wonderful things about their enemies. The aliens were stronger and faster than humans, but they were also cleaner. Their ships had no bacteria or viruses because they killed all tiny life forms to keep their crews healthy. This meant their bodies had never learned to fight the countless small creatures that covered Earth. Bennett had been a healer before the war, but now she was designing weapons that would make the aliens sick. She opened her box and showed Morrison a small glass tube filled with brown liquid. It looked harmless, but it contained modified Earth bacteria that would eat alien flesh from the inside. Captain Ryan Carter had also learned important things about their enemies. He had been studying captured alien fighters and found they were built like perfect machines. Every system had backup systems and safety controls to protect the pilot. The aliens valued safety more than speed, and this made their ships predictable. Carter had convinced Morrison to let him modify human fighters. Using alien technology, he ripped out safety systems and life support equipment to make room for bigger engines and more weapons. His new fighters were dangerous to fly, but they were faster than anything the aliens had. Commander Sophie Davis had been listening to alien radio signals and learning how they thought. The aliens believed they were superior to all other life forms, and this belief made them careless. They did not expect humans to be clever or dangerous. Davis had learned to copy their communication codes, and she was sending false messages to confuse their commanders. She told them human settlements were in the wrong places and sent alien patrols into traps. Morrison looked at his 3 officers and felt something like hope. For the first time in months, the aliens had superior technology, but humans had something better. They had creativity and desperation, and the willingness to try things that might kill them. He gave the order to begin their first real attack. High Counselor Zethkar was meeting with his ship commanders when the first reports came in. 3 alien bases on Earth had gone silent at the same time. At first he thought it was a communication problem, but then the images arrived. The bases were empty and the alien soldiers inside were dead. They had not been shot or blown up. Instead, they had died from some kind of sickness that made their skin turn black and fall off. Zethkar ordered his doctors to study the bodies, but they could not understand what had killed his soldiers. The disease was unlike anything in their medical databases. It seemed to be made from tiny Earth creatures that had been changed to attack alien bodies. The alien leader felt a cold touch of fear. He had expected the humans to fight with guns and bombs like civilized warriors. Instead, they were using biological weapons that turned living bodies into rotting meat. While Zethkar was trying to understand the disease attacks, Carter was leading. the first human fighter squadron into space. His modified ships moved like angry wasps around the larger alien vessels. The alien pilots tried to follow their training manuals, but human fighters did not behave like the manuals said they should. Carter dove his ship through a cloud of space debris. That would have destroyed any careful pilot. He used the debris as cover while he fired rockets at an alien cruiser. The alien shield stopped most of his weapons, but some got through and damaged their engines. When alien fighters came after him, Carter did something no sane pilot would try. He flew straight at the largest enemy ship and waited until the last second before turning away. The alien pilots pulled away early because their ships would not let them take such risks. Carter escaped, and the aliens learned that humans were willing to die if it meant hurting their enemies. Commander Davis was also at work during the attack. She had built a powerful radio transmitter in the mountains and used it to broadcast fake orders to alien ships. She told one group of aliens that another group was actually human spies in disguise. The confused aliens started shooting at each other while Davis watched and smiled. She also broadcast images of the dead aliens from the diseased bases to every ship in the enemy fleet. The pictures showed alien soldiers melting from the inside while they screamed for help that never came. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens felt afraid. Dr. Bennett was already working on her next biological weapon. She had dissected more alien corpses and learned that different alien species had different weaknesses. The tall gray aliens from the desert planet could not handle Earth fungus. The blue water aliens died when exposed to certain Earth viruses. The insect aliens from the hive worlds were killed by modified bacteria that ate their shell armor. Bennett was creating a different poison for each type of alien in the Council fleet. She had been a doctor who saved lives, but now she was learning to destroy them with scientific precision. The first human counterattack lasted only 6 hours, but it changed everything. 3 alien bases were destroyed, and 2 alien ships were damaged. More importantly, the aliens realized they were fighting an enemy, unlike any they had faced before. Humans did not follow the rules of war that other species used. They used biological weapons and psychological warfare and suicide tactics. They turned their weaknesses into strengths and their desperation into weapon high. Counselor Zethkar called an emergency meeting of his commanders. The other alien leaders were frightened and angry. They had expected to conquer a primitive world in a few days, but the war was now in its 4th month. Some wanted to leave Earth and find an easier target. But Zethkar refused to retreat. He had told the entire galaxy that humans were weak animals. If he ran away now, the Council would lose respect, and other species might rebel. Zethkar ordered his fleet to destroy every human settlement they could find. He would not be defeated by primitive creatures who fought with germs and dirty tricks. But Admiral Morrison was ready for the alien escalation. He had been preparing for this moment since the first day of the invasion. The humans had learned to fight like their enemies, but they had also learned to fight like themselves. They were chaotic and unpredictable, and willing to sacrifice anything to survive. The aliens had made the mistake of trying to study humans instead of simply killing them all. Now the humans were ready to show them what they had learned from being hunted like animals. 6 months after the invasion began, the alien fleet hung above Earth like dying stars. Many ships were dark and silent because their crews had died from diseases they could not understand. Dr. Lisa Bennett watched the orbital battle from her underground laboratory and smiled with cold satisfaction. Her biological weapons had spread through the alien fleet like invisible fire. The aliens had tried to create clean environments inside their ships, but humans had learned to make their diseases spread. Through air and water and even metal surfaces, Bennett had become very good at killing aliens in ways that made them suffer. Her latest creation was a virus that attacked alien nervous systems. Infected aliens went insane before they died, and they often killed their own teammates in their madness. Captain Ryan Carter was leading human fighter squadrons that had become legends among the surviving alien pilots. His ships were faster and more deadly than anything the Council had ever faced. Carter had removed every safety system from his fighters and replaced them with weapons and engines. His pilots had no life support systems and no ejection seats. They flew in pressure suits with only 30 minutes of air. If their ships were damaged, they would die in space, but they could move like ghosts and strike like lightning. Carter himself had shot down 40 alien fighters in the past month. The alien pilots had started to refuse combat missions because they were terrified of the human death. Ship's commander Sophie Davis had turned psychological warfare into an art form. She broadcast videos of dying aliens to every ship in the enemy fleet. The aliens saw their friends and family members rotting away from human diseases. They heard recordings of alien soldiers screaming for help while the virus ate their brains. Davis also sent false messages that made the aliens suspicious of each other. She told the insect aliens that the gray aliens were planning to betray them. She convinced the water aliens that the desert aliens were stealing their supplies. The Council alliance began to break apart as different species stopped trusting each other. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship and watched alien ships retreat from Earth orbit. The human commander had changed during the war. His eyes were cold and his voice never showed mercy. He had learned to think like his enemies, but with human creativity added to alien logic. Morrison had built his flagship from the wreckage of destroyed alien vessels. It was faster than any Council ship and armed with weapons that fired both energy beams and biological warheads. He called the ship Revenge and painted its hull with images of burning alien cities. High Counselor Zethkar received reports of the human attacks from his command bunker on the moon. He had moved there after human raiders destroyed his main ship and killed most of his personal guard. The alien leader looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear half of his fleet was dead or dying from human diseases. His remaining ships were fighting each other because of human lies and propaganda. The humans had somehow built new ships that were superior to Council technology. Worst of all, the galaxy was watching. Commander Davis had made sure that news of human victories spread to every world under Council control. Slave species that had served the Council for centuries were beginning to ask dangerous questions. If primitive humans could defeat the mighty Council, then maybe the Council was not so mighty after all. Rebellions were starting on 17 different worlds. The first major human victory came when Captain Carter led a raid on the alien supply depot near Jupiter 50. Human fighters attacked a station defended by 300 alien ships. The aliens expected a normal battle, but Carter had learned to fight like a human. He divided his forces into small groups that attacked from different directions, while the alien defenders tried to organize their response. Carter himself flew straight at the station core. He used the station's own defensive shields as cover and fired biological warheads through the air recycling systems. Within hours, every alien on the station was dead or dying from modified Earth fungus. Carter captured the station and all its supplies, including advanced weapons and rare metals. More importantly, he captured alien communication equipment that contained the locations of every Council military base in 3 star systems. Admiral Morrison used this information to plan the most ambitious human attack of the war. He would strike at the Council home worlds themselves. Dr. Bennett prepared special biological weapons for each target planet she had learned to make diseases that could survive in space and remain active for months. Her new weapons could turn entire worlds into graveyards. Commander Davis prepared a propaganda campaign that would broadcast human victories across the galaxy. She wanted every enslaved species to know that the Council could be defeated. Captain Carter modified his fighters for long-range missions that would take them far from Earth. His pilots knew they might not return, but they were eager to carry the war to the aliens who had destroyed their world. When the human fleet departed Earth, it looked nothing like the desperate resistance that had hidden in caves 6 months earlier. Morrison commanded 12 major warships and 300 fighters. Every ship was armed with both energy weapons and biological warfare systems. The humans had learned to combine alien technology with human ruthlessness. Their ships were faster and more dangerous than anything the Council had ever built. The fleet left Earth orbit and jumped to hyperspace. Their destination was the Zeth system, where High Counselor Zethkar's own people lived on 3 heavily defended worlds. Morrison had decided to make the alien leader watch his home burn, just as the aliens had made humans watch Earth burn. When the human fleet arrived in the Zeth system, the local defense forces were not prepared for what they faced. They expected a desperate attack by primitive humans using captured technology. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had surpassed their own capabilities. Human ships moved with precision and struck with devastating force. They used tactics that no council commander had ever imagined. Morrison sent biological weapons into the atmospheres of all three worlds while his ships destroyed the orbital defenses. Within days, millions of aliens were dying from diseases that ate them from the inside. The council homeworlds became monuments to human vengeance. High Counselor Zethkar received the news while hiding on his lunar bunker. His entire species was dying, and there was nothing he could do to save them. The humans had become something terrible and unstoppable. They were no longer the primitive animals he had dismissed. They had become the monsters that nightmares were made of. 1 year after the invasion began, humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were hunting the aliens across the galaxy. Like wolves chasing wounded prey, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship as it emerged from hyperspace above another council world. This was the 15th alien planet his fleet had attacked in the past 3 months. The human commander looked down at the blue and green world below and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Morrison had changed completely since the day Earth was attacked. He no longer remembered the peaceful man who had once hoped for friendship with alien races. That man had died when the first human cities burned. What remained was something harder and more dangerous than any alien warrior. Human fleet that surrounded the alien planet was a terrible sight. 50 massive warships painted black and red with images of burning alien cities. Each ship carried weapons that fired both energy beams and biological warheads. The humans had learned to build ships that were faster and more deadly than anything the Council had ever created. They removed safety systems and comfort features to make room for bigger engines and more weapons. Human crews lived in cramped spaces and breathed recycled air, but their ships could outrun and outfight any alien vessel. Dr. Lisa Bennett had become the most feared scientist in the galaxy. Her biological weapons had evolved into instruments of precise horror. She could design a disease that would kill only adult males of a specific alien species. She could create viruses that attacked alien brain chemistry and drove entire populations insane. Her latest creation was a weapon that made alien flesh dissolve while keeping the nervous system intact. Victims could feel everything as their bodies melted around them. Bennett had once been a healer who wanted to save lives. Now she spent her days finding new ways to make aliens suffer and die. Captain Ryan Carter commanded a squadron of fighter pilots who had become legends throughout the galaxy. Alien children learned to fear the human death pilots who could appear anywhere without warning. Carter's fighters were built for maximum speed and firepower, with no regard for pilot safety. Human pilots wore pressure suits and breathed bottled air because their ships had no life support systems. They flew missions that would kill any sane pilot, but they always achieved their objectives. Carter himself had destroyed over 200 alien ships and bombed 40 different worlds. He painted a small skull on his fighter for every 1,000 aliens he had killed. His ship now carried 67 skulls. Commander Sophie Davis had turned propaganda into a weapon more devastating than any bomb she broadcast. Images of human victories to every corner of the galaxy. Alien civilians watched their military forces die in horrible ways, while human voices explained that this was justice for the attack on Earth. Davis had learned to speak 12 different alien languages, and she used each one to spread fear and despair. She told enslaved species that they could join the human cause and be spared. She told council species that they would all die slowly and painfully unless they surrendered immediately. Her broadcasts caused riots and rebellions on hundreds of worlds. The council empire was collapsing as species after species abandoned their alien masters to join the humans or simply hide from them. High Counselor Zethkar had become a broken creature, hiding in the deepest bunkers of his command moon. The proud alien leader who had once dismissed humans as primitive animals now spent his days in terror. His own species was extinct. The 3 homeworlds of his people were silent graveyards where nothing lived except the bacteria that had consumed every alien on the surface. 11 other council species had been completely destroyed by human biological weapons. The remaining species were scattered and hiding in distant star systems. Zethkar had tried to negotiate a surrender 6 months earlier, but the humans had refused to listen. Admiral Morrison had broadcast his response to the entire galaxy. He played a recording of Zethkar's original invasion speech, where the alien leader had called Humans, animals that needed to be relocated to work camps. Then Morrison had spoken in a voice as cold as space itself. The humans would accept nothing less than the complete destruction of every council species. The aliens would be relocated to appropriate facilities just as they had planned for humanity. Those facilities would be graves. The human attack on the blue and green world below was swift and merciless. Morrison's ships destroyed the orbital defenses in 30 minutes. Carter's fighters delivered biological weapons to every major population center. Davis broadcast surrender demands that she knew would be refused. Bennett's diseases spread through the alien population like wildfire. Within hours, 8 billion aliens were dying in agony. The humans recorded everything and broadcast the images throughout the galaxy. They wanted every surviving alien to understand what happened to enemies of humanity. Other species watched the destruction and made their choice. Some tried to flee to distant galaxies, others sent desperate messages offering complete surrender and eternal service to humanity. A few tried to fight back, but they learned quickly that resistance only made the humans more creative in their methods of destruction. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. Humans looked weak and primitive, but they were the most dangerous predators in the universe. They could adapt to any challenge and turn any weakness into a strength. Most terrifying of all, they never forgot an injury and never forgave an enemy. When humans were hurt, they did not just fight back. They became something that nightmares could not imagine. Admiral Morrison stood on his bridge and watched another world die. He felt no sadness or regret. The aliens had taught humanity to be monsters, and now they would live with the consequences, or rather they would die with the consequences. The human fleet moved on to its next target. There were still a few council worlds left to burn. Morrison had a promise to keep every alien who had participated in the attack on Earth would die slowly and painfully. Every world that had supported the council would become a monument to human vengeance. The galaxy would learn to fear the name of humanity, and when the last alien was dead, Morrison would turn his attention to building an empire that would last forever, an empire where humans ruled through fear and superior firepower, an empire where no one would ever again make the mistake of attacking Earth. 2 years after the invasion began, the war was over. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Their 12-member species were either extinct or scattered to the farthest reaches of space. In place of the Council was something new and far more terrifying. Human Empire Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of his command station above Earth and looked out at the greatest war fleet in galactic history. 3,000 human warships hung in space around the blue planet. Each ship was faster and more deadly than anything the Council had ever built. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy entire worlds. Morrison had been promoted from Admiral to Supreme Commander of all human forces. The peaceful man who had once hoped for friendship with aliens was completely gone. What remained was the most feared military leader in the galaxy. His hair was white and his eyes were like chips of ice. When he spoke, entire star systems listened and obeyed. Earth itself had been rebuilt. But it was no longer the peaceful world it had once been. The great cities had been replaced by military fortresses. Shipyards covered the continents where forests had once grown. The oceans were filled with submarine bases that built the weapons of human conquest. Humanity had learned that peace was a luxury they could not afford. They had been attacked once and it would never happen again. Dr. Lisa Bennett had become the director of biological warfare for the human empire. Her laboratories covered entire moons where she created weapons that could destroy any form of alien life. She had cataloged the biology of 600 different alien species. For each species, she had created at least 12 different weapons that could kill them in horrible ways. Bennett no longer remembered the woman who had once wanted to heal the sick and help people live better lives. She was now the galaxy's master of death. Her name was whispered in fear on 1,000 worlds. Captain Ryan Carter commanded the Death Wing, the most elite fighter squadron in human space. His pilots were volunteers who had given up everything to become perfect instruments of destruction. They flew fighters that were more like guided missiles than normal ships. Carter himself had destroyed over 500 alien vessels and participated in the bombing of 83 worlds. His ship now carried 347 skulls painted on its hull, Each skull represented 1,000 confirmed alien kills. Commander Sophie Davis had been promoted to Director of Psychological Operations. Her propaganda broadcasts reached every corner of the galaxy. She spoke in 200 different alien languages and dialects. Her message was always the same. Humanity ruled the galaxy, now, alien. Species could serve the Empire and live, or they could resist and die. There were no other choices. Davis had convinced 47 different species to join the human empire voluntarily. These aliens served as soldiers and workers and scientists for their human masters. They were treated well as long as they remained loyal and useful, but they never forgot that they lived only because humans allowed them to live. High Counselor Zethkar was the last surviving member of the species that had started the war. He had been captured during the final assault on his command bunker and brought to Earth in chains. The once proud alien leader was now a broken creature who lived in a cell beneath the ruins of New York. Morrison visited him once each month to remind him of what his arrogance had cost. Zethkar had watched his entire species die from human biological weapons. He had seen his empire collapse and his allies flee or surrender. He had learned that humans were not the primitive animals he had dismissed. They were the most dangerous predators in the universe on this day. Morrison stood outside Zethkar's cell and delivered his final judgment. The war was over and justice had been served. Every council species had been destroyed or driven into exile. Every world that had supported the invasion of Earth was now a human colony or a radioactive wasteland. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Morrison looked down at the last alien who had dared to attack. Humanity. Zethkar was old and broken and filled with regret. "You were right about one thing," Morrison said in a voice as cold as the space between stars. "We were primitive when you found us, but you taught us to evolve. You taught us that the universe is a dangerous place where only the strong survive. You taught us that mercy is weakness and peace is a luxury we cannot afford. Most importantly, you taught us that when someone tries to destroy you, the only proper response is to destroy them completely." Zethkar looked up with eyes full of pain and whispered his final words. "We should have killed you all." Morrison nodded and smiled without warmth. "Yes, you should have. But you made the mistake of trying to study us instead. You wanted to watch us suffer and learn how we behaved when we were beaten. That curiosity cost you everything." Morrison turned and walked away. Behind him, Zethkar died alone in his cell, the last member of the species that had doomed the galaxy to human rule. Morrison returned to his command station and looked out at the human fleet. The ships were already departing for their new assignments. Some would establish human colonies on the best worlds of the former Council, Empire. Others would patrol the borders of human space and watch for any threats to the new order. Few would hunt down the remaining Council survivors who had fled to distant galaxies. Humanity would not be satisfied until every enemy was dead or enslaved. The galaxy was safer for humanity, but infinitely more dangerous for everyone else. Alien species lived in constant fear of human displeasure. They had seen what happened to races that opposed the Empire. Complete extinction was the only result. Morrison activated his communication system and sent a message to every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple and clear. Humanity ruled the galaxy now. Any species that served the Empire faithfully would be protected and allowed to prosper. Any species that threatened human interests would be destroyed without mercy. The choice was simple: serve or die. The message ended with 2 words that would be remembered for 1,000,000 years. Never again. Morrison closed the communication channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there might be other threats to humanity. Other species that thought they could destroy Earth and its people. They would learn the same lesson that the Galactic Council had learned. Humans looked weak, but they were the most dangerous predators in the universe. They adapted to any challenge and turned every weakness into a strength. Most importantly, they never forgot and they never forgave. The galaxy had tried to destroy humanity, and humanity had become its master. The war was over, but the lesson would last forever. Never attack Earth.